So we'll start off with Dr. Thuraya, and the very direct question, what I think would be very useful for all of us as well, in terms of what nature-based solution actually is. We hear it a lot. People kind of assume it's the whales, it's trees, it's this. But what exactly is nature-based solutions, and how did that idea actually come from?
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Good evening, everyone. And it's my great pleasure to be with you here today to talk about one of the most significant topic, not just at the national level in Oman, but it's globally. And so many people are asking about how nature really can help in adapt to climate change. Nature-based solutions are actions and technologies that developed by International Union for the Conservation of Nature, IUCN, 20 years ago. So it is not a new idea, new idea. And it addresses most of the societal challenges, such as climate change, disaster risk reduction, food and water security, and aims to protect, sustainable manage and restoration of the ecosystems and biodiversity, and at the same time to conserve the health for the human, and it's very critical to the development of the economy. And now lots of international organizations and also countries, they considered the nature-based solution as one of the most significant tools for the adaptation or the national strategies for the adaptation of the climate change. And so many countries already developed lots of initiatives for the nature-based solutions, and can be clearly seen in countries such as China, India, and so many countries in Africa, UK, Canada, United States. And IUCN, they prepared a report, and where they illustrated that nature-based solution, when developed and implemented in any countries, for example, in China and India, it helps to reduce the flooding by $57 billion by year. And also it helps in provide adaptation to the climate change adaptation by Paris Agreement by 37%. And also it helps in providing business services around by $170 billion by 2030. So you can imagine, just by transplantation of especially mangroves and trees, or by management, sustainable management of land degraded areas or wetlands, how it easily can help not just the conservation or enhancing of the biodiversity loss, but also it's for the local communities, for their livelihoods, and also for the economy. So this is basically the nature-based solution idea.
Well, thanks so much for that introduction. And I think one of the interesting nuggets of facts is each year a mature tree cleans the air by absorbing 22 kilograms of carbon dioxide and releasing oxygen in exchange.
Yes.
That's just a very mature tree. And then if we talk about mangroves, that's even more. And if we talk about other species, that's even more. And that brings me to my question to Suad in terms of we're all very much practitioners in the environment, and we hear a lot about climate change, tending to forget that there's another crisis happening at the same time with climate change. So what does that usually mean when we hear double crisis? And how do you as a person also reconcile that it's two things that we need to work on at the same time?
Yeah, so the dual crisis that is that we tend to hear about is this combination of climate change and biodiversity loss that is taking place simultaneously. Climate change we've familiarized ourselves with, and biodiversity loss, they are both interconnected and they are both influenced by human activities, and their solutions can be provided through nature-based solutions. When we look at trying to understand what is biodiversity, biodiversity is all of the living things around us, as well as the habitats, so all of your plants, animals, algae, and the habitats that they occupy, and together this forms an ecosystem. Healthy ecosystems actually have very important ecosystem services that they provide, which we've heard in the video recording. So things such as providing us with clean air, clean water, food, fuel. And then when looking at climate change, the ecosystem services also extend towards mitigating against some of the impacts of climate change, such as carbon sequestration, the ability of mangroves and rainforests to be able to capture carbon dioxide, the ability of natural habitats to protect human beings and human developments from strong waves and storm surges that are occurring. But unfortunately, biodiversity is being lost. The WWF Living Planet report estimated that about 50% of the world's vertebrates has declined between 1970s and 2010. Similarly, the Global Assessment Report shows that about 1 million plant and animal species are expected to be at risk of extinction within the coming decades. So it is quite alarming, and we need to understand what is causing biodiversity loss. Part of it has to do with human activities, development, urbanization, overfishing, but coupled with that is the fact that there is also climate change at hand, and climate change is impacting biodiversity loss, and biodiversity loss as well is impacting climate change. So they are interrelated. And when we look at how climate change impacts biodiversity, it has to do with the increasing temperatures, which might mean that certain species are not able to adapt. So that might lead to their extinction, or in other cases, they might decide to move to other locations where they didn't originally occur, which means that they might become invasive species in a new location, wiping out some of the native species. Or other ways that climate change impacts biodiversity has to do with ocean acidification. You have more carbon dioxide in your atmosphere. This then goes into the oceans, making the oceans more acidic. And certain marine organisms have what is known as an exoskeleton, so the skeleton outside their body, which crabs and lobsters have, and they have difficulty in forming this as the oceans become more acidic. Coral reef bleaching is another common term that we hear about a lot, and it is a result of sea surface temperatures increasing. So as your sea temperatures increase, the coral reefs expel the algae that lives within them, which is known as zooxanthellae. They depend on them for their food, but they expel them because of the heat. And if the temperature conditions do not return back to ideal conditions, the coral reefs then die. And losing out on your coral reef is not a loss of just the species or the organism, it's a loss of all of the ecosystem services that they provide us. So the loss of the protection from storms and wave action, the loss of the ability for commercially important fish to utilize those coral habitats. So these are some of the ways that climate change is impacting biodiversity. And then on the other hand, biodiversity, when you lose your important species, you are not allowing nature to act in the way that it's supposed to act, so it's not able to sequester as much carbon as it's supposed to. All of these ecosystem services are lost, and it's a vicious cycle. So if we look at some of the forest fires that have been taking place across Europe, the fires are leading to more carbon dioxide in the atmosphere, which ultimately is then also increasing on the greenhouse effect, and the cycle continues.
And I actually was just at the B20 meetings in India and just flew back today. And yesterday there was a very interesting presentation on climate and the climate and the energy transition towards it. specifically when we talk about the wildfires, the number of hectares, millions of hectares that it has engulfed so far is more than 10 times than anything that we have seen anywhere, anytime in our lifetime. So it's beyond significant. Like the number went shot up way into like millions of hectares in comparison to 2022, which was like around 3 to 5 million. So it's quite alarming that these activities as well are just kind of increasing as well. Now, moving back to Dr. Thuraya, globally, even though nature-based solutions, as you mentioned, is something that has been termed and a lot of organizations, and there's been a lot of momentum towards working towards it 20 years ago, there's statistics that show that it only gets 10% of all the financing that is available specifically for climate. And then we have Oman that announced its ambitious net zero plan. And within the plan itself, if you actually go through it, which is available, you could just search for Oman net zero plan and you'll actually get the whole PowerPoint presentation. In one of them, it says 6 ways to reach to net zero.
Yeah.
And one of the ways is nature-based solutions. So if you could tell us more about Oman's ambition when it comes to that, and also, is it serious in putting money into doing this as well, or do you think as well that there are other ways that Oman can reach net zero in addition to that?
I think nature-based solution will be one of the important technologies for Oman if they want really to reach net zero by 2050, because it's not just helping the climate change adaptation, but also it helps to conserve the biodiversity, to restore the biodiversity and the different ecosystems that's here in Oman, and also it will help in developing of different economic sectors, especially when we are talking about the ecotourism. So to be honest with you, nature-based solution as an idea in Oman, it's very new.
Okay.
Although
we hear, although we hear planting of mangroves every
Yes,
single
yeah.
year, so this is
we
interesting.
started to transplant mangrove from 2001, so it is more than 20 years. But if you're talking about nature-based solution is not just transplanting or not just having cleaning of the coral reefs or restoration of the coral reefs. There are technologies and guidelines and standards for the nature-based solution, and you have to be very careful when you want to use the nature as a based solution for the climate change, because you have to think about how to use the nature in a sustainable way, in a sustainable manner. Because if you use it more than what is already exists, maybe you're going to lose it, and maybe it's going to be a disaster rather than solving the problem. So the IUCN, they prepared a guideline for the nature-based solution. And there are different criteria and also different indicators. And you have to study carefully what challenges you wanted really to solve from using the nature-based solution. And then after you study carefully the challenges, it is the climate change or biodiversity loss or food or water security or something related to the local communities. After that, you have to see what services or biodiversity you can use for that nature-based solution. And in that, you have to study it in very deep, the biodiversity, which you're going to use it for the services. So nature-based solution is not just a transplanting, although here in Oman we transplanted more than 800,000 mangrove trees along the coastal line of Oman. And we started also to planting the seeds, not only the trees, but also the seeds, and I think it's more than 3 million.
Wow.
Okay. But it is now we transplanted, and it is very successful project. Either Oman is a leader a leader country in the Gulf, around the Gulf countries, for the transplanting of the mangrove. So also a lots of Gulf countries, they coming to Oman and asking about our experiences. And also we give them some seeds from Oman for them
And they're
to...
the same species?
Yes, yeah, it's
Okay.
the same species. So now we are working on having a guideline and also a clear technologies of how to use really the nature-based solution in Oman in a proper way. And I think we will start with the mangrove because it's already a project started, initiative started, and also we have the 10 million transplanted trees.
Native trees,
Yeah,
yes.
native trees, it's including also the mangrove. So these two initiatives, we have to work on them and to develop them to align with the international guidelines for the nature-based solution. We have some projects, but we have to develop it more. Because we want to use it because, for example, the mangrove, when we are talking about mangrove absorbed 5 times carbon than other trees. So also we have to work on how we can use the mangrove for the carbon credits.
Yeah, okay. Yes.
Okay, and this is a challenge not just in Oman, all around the world. For the carbon credits, it's a challenge because it depends on the trees, on the size of the trees and the volumes and so on. So you have also to be very careful when you having the trees and to calculate the carbon for the trees because there are a lots of errors. And also we have to have projects on how to use these mangroves restoration for reducing the storm surge, coastal erosion, for ecotourism. So we have to work hard on it, although we have lots of initiatives that already started in Oman for the conservation of the biodiversity, but we have to develop and to move to the next step in how to calculate the carbon credits, how to use these lands for the restoration, for the reducing of the risk or to adapt to climate change, and also for the local communities as, for example, for ecotourism or for the food and the other services.
Right, right. So just to clarify, Oman is still working towards the guideline.
Yes, yeah.
When can we expect news about this guideline being completed?
To be honest with you, I don't know, because this is the first day for me today.
Okay.
I'm coming back from my study leave. I was away for 1 year. So we will have meetings and we will see, because we're having a team who are working on the net zero in Oman for the environment, and they're working hard. And we will see how we can move it very quickly. And it's very important because I think the COP28 is coming very soon, so we have to be very clarified with all the initiatives and the programs and the technologies that we have to be implemented for the net zero emission by 2050.
Right, we would love that, and I think I speak on behalf of everyone. The more information we have about what Oman's ambitions and what they're planning on doing for COP28, the better.
Yes.
And that's hopefully something that we as ESO are trying to as well kind of educate and spread that awareness as well to the public. Suad, so we touched upon the double or dual crisis, and we touched upon various factoids that you mentioned. But when it comes to clear examples to see that interconnection, maybe kind of give us more insight on terms of what can I actually see with my own eyes that I can connect these two together? What are those?
Yeah, so to take, for example, Oman's biodiversity, while we're here, we have a beautiful marine ecosystem that has a high abundance of various species that exist here. We have about 20 different species of whales and dolphins that occur in Oman's waters, and ESO in particular have been focusing on studying the Arabian Sea humpback whale, which is a non-migratory population with only about 100 individuals remaining. When we look at conservation of humpback whales, we're looking at them as flagship species. So as we're working towards their conservation, we are looking at the conservation of the broader ecosystem. And the role that large whales, such as humpback whales, play is very important, as we've seen in our poll. So whales have a role to play when it comes to sequestering carbon. And they do this in three main ways. One is through their movement. The second is through their feces or their poop. And third is in their death, as you mentioned, the deadfall. So the way that this happens is that as whales move from the bottom of the ocean as they're feeding and come up to the surface, they actually bring nutrients with them to the surface. And bringing these nutrients helps to stimulate phytoplankton growth. So phytoplankton are microscopic organisms that form the base of the food web, so similar to plants on land. They're the ones that undertake photosynthesis, taking in carbon dioxide and returning oxygen. So the whale's movement helps to stimulate this. Similarly, whale feces, like the large plumes that they release, actually does bring nutrients to the surface of the ocean, which also helps in phytoplankton growth. And then finally, as you've mentioned earlier, when they die, whales are large marine mammals. They capture lots of carbon in their bodies over their lifetime. And when they die, they take this stored carbon dioxide to the bottom of the ocean with them. They do get decomposed, but it takes a very long time. So the stored carbon dioxide can stay in their bodies for close to 100 years, hence locking it. And so this is one way in which biodiversity helps in carbon capture. On the other hand, climate change is impacting other species. So if we look at Oman's nesting beaches, we have 4 different species of sea turtles that nest in Oman's shores. And if we notice the trend of the cyclones that have been coming to Oman, it tends to happen during the earlier part of the southwest monsoon, typically around June. This is also a period of peak nesting, particularly for loggerhead sea turtles on Masira Island, as well as almost peak for the green turtles of Ras Al Had. And some studies that had been conducted in 2010 and 2015 following FET and Ashoba have shown that these nesting beaches are impacted by these cyclone activities. There is they are impacted, the beaches, by the storm surges and the waves that are causing some of these nests to become inundated. And global reports show that when nests become inundated, this minimizes and impacts on hatching success. So the increasing frequency and intensity of cyclones taking place in Oman will have an impact on the recruitment of sea turtles. And in addition to the cyclone activities, things such as increasing temperatures of sand is leading to more female turtles being born rather than males, and that also is impacting their natural ratios. The climate change is also impacting the movement of currents, which can impact their migration patterns as well. So these are just a few examples of things that we can see potentially happening here in Oman.
Yeah, quite saddening, but there are solutions out there that we can actually work on. Dr. Thuraya, when we usually talk about nature, we seem to disconnect from the rest of what happens around us. You touched a bit in the beginning on economics of exactly what numbers we can bring in just by doing nature-based solutions, just by forms of conservation. Could you shed light of how that can be connected in terms of the economics aspect of it and us as human beings as well, like al-iqtisad wal-insan, as you mentioned before?
Yeah,
Yes.
thank you. This is very important because a lot of people, they don't believe there is a relation between the economy and the nature and the biodiversity.
Maybe fishermen would know.
Yeah, how can the biodiversity increase the economy, or it's very important to the national economy. But if we can just listed some of the industrial or infrastructure or any other sectors, we can see most of the businesses depends on the nature. And I think there was a report from the United Nations which mentioned that annually the streaming of the GDP, which comes from the natural services, it's around equal to $44 trillion.
Wow, that's a huge number.
Yes, and a lot of people they say, oh, how? What's the relation? So the food is coming from the nature or the biodiversity, the infrastructure, the mining sectors, the oil sector, ecotourism, the other tourisms. If you're talking about any other businesses or any other economy, it's based on the nature. So if they using the ecosystem or the biodiversity in unsustainable way, definitely we're going to reach a point where there will be no economy, because the economy depends on the nature. That's why now a lot of countries they considering the nature-based solution in their main national plan for the country itself, and also for the adaptation and mitigation of the climate change, because it's very important if you want to develop your economy and also the well-being of the local communities. It is very important to also to restore and to protect the ecosystem and the biodiversity. Or otherwise, we're going to reach to a point how are we going to use the water or the food or the air or the marine life.
How we survive?
How are we
basically?
going
How
to
do we
survive?
Yeah.
Because everything we use it is from the nature. So we have to treat the nature in a proper way and to be a friend with the nature. So this is very important. There is a strong relation between the nature and the economy, and also the nature-based solution.
Yes, definitely. I have another question that's looming, but before I'll ask Suad, you mentioned all of these interconnected impacts for biodiversity, climate change. I think we're all kind of on a low at the moment, just thinking of those things. But a question to you is, how can we make a difference? I know we as civil society, you can all join ESO as members in order for you to join in the efforts that we do. But could you just shed light on activities that we're working on at the moment, that we are striving very hard to ensure that we can counter some of these impacts?
Yeah, so ESO as a civil society organization, it's true, we are working on, conserving nature, but we have to do it hand in hand with the community. So we do a lot of work with different sectors of society, whether it's women's associations, farmers, fishermen, and most importantly, the youth and children. So one example is the Namat school competition, which is a government school competition to get the students to compete against each other to find solutions for an environmental issue, whether it's related to water management, energy management, or waste management. And one of the important criteria is that they have to work with their local community. So that the solutions that they're providing are not only within their school setting, but outside as well. And it's been very successful. We are going to be announcing the winners of the competition later this month. So that's quite exciting. But the students are very inspiring. They have a lot of quite innovative solutions that they have come up with, such as planting native trees within their school and watering it through innovative ways using grey water and other types of solutions, changing the community from burning, for example, parts of the date palm that they no longer require, which creates emission. But rather than doing that, one of the schools partnered with a business owner to develop a device that helps them convert it into a byproduct, which can then feed back into the agricultural sector. And then, other examples of the work that we do has to do with this series, such as the Oman Climate Dialogues, is essentially to raise awareness amongst different levels of of society, and all the work that we do is in partnership not just with the community, but government entities such as the Environment Authority, or entities such as Asyad, and I will take the opportunity to thank them for enabling us to host such dialogues to raise awareness. And one of the important programs that's going to be part of this series will be taking place at the end of October, which is specifically targeted to the youth and green jobs. So we really are, we do have faith that that the next generation can help us work on innovative solutions for some of these issues that we're facing.
Was definitely, and that was actually my question to Dr. Thuraya. With all of this ambition that Oman is having at the moment, and we're all kind of collectively working together to ensure that we put nature-based solutions, at least in Oman, on the map, maybe perhaps through the mangroves, because we're very well known for that at the moment. What words of advice do you have for those who are interested, and how can they work together with the Environment Authority to ensure that they can be part of it?
I think if we want to achieve something, we have to work all together. And the achievement of the net zero emission is not just for one entity, for the Environment Authority or the Ministry of Energy. So it is an integrated work. We have to work all together, the government, the private sectors, the NGOs, and the most important is the local communities, because it's very important to be aware about the disasters of the climate change. And we can see now how really the climate change is increasing around the world, and it's changing a lot of ecosystems. So it is not just the work of the government, but we have to work all together, even from our houses. For our children, we have to aware them about the importance of how they can conserve the environment, how they can have a critical role in the adaptation or mitigation of the climate change, because each of us, we can play a critical role in the adaptation of the climate change, and even for the nature-based solution. Because nature-based solutions, one of the solutions is about the awareness, about how to work all together, about how to integrate the efforts from the local communities, from the children, from the families, from the government, from the public sectors, NGOs. They playing a very important role in such solutions, and also how to work with the international organizations, and also with the initiatives from the different countries. So I think it is an integration work and efforts from all different sectors and entities. We have to work together to achieve not just the net zero emission, but to achieve a healthy environment and a sustainable resources for the coming generation for Oman.
That's definitely.
And Oman is worth it.
Yeah. So Ad, you'll have the last word. And it's very much in line in the same thing. For those who are struggling with being very overwhelmed, there's a recent study that we actually conducted as part of my work with the Arab Youth Council for Climate Change is climate anxiety within young people has doubled just from last year. The levels last year were not good. They were at 60%. Oh, sorry, they were at 40%, and now they're really towards the end because they're seeing more and more of these news coming in, more of the fires in the news and so on. So what sort of consoling words would you pass on to that generation, and what are things that you think they can take in terms of steps that would allow them to reconcile with the fact that they are doing something?
Well, I think my advice will always be spend more time in nature and get everyone around you to spend more time with in nature, because I really do believe that exposure to nature gives you, first of all, calming energy, which will calm some of this climate anxiety that they're having, and maybe they will also be inspired to understand the fact that this nature is important not just for itself, but also for human well-being, and there are a lot of benefits that can come through that. And then other than that, reading and education. So educate yourself as much as you can, work on a course on sustainability. Pick up whatever you can and see how you can work on supporting this climate crisis, because it's a community solution. It's not something that one government entity needs to work on or one individual needs to work on. We all need to work together as a community. And in the same way that every little action that we take has an impact, in the same way we can also take some positive actions to reverse this.
Thank you so much, Suad Al-Harthi. She's the Executive Director of Environment Society of Oman, and Dr. Thuraya Sareri, Assistant Director General of Nature Conservation at the Environment Authority. Thank you so much for this really fruitful panel. Like I said, it will perhaps be my favorite because it was something that's very close to my heart as well. So thank you so much for gracing us with your presence. And for those watching us, thank you so much for watching this, and have a great day.